Så. Kan man göra så? Alltså att man bara... Ja, det kanske inte så. Ni skulle kunna skicka.
Har jag den här?
Ja.
Har jag?
Ja,
Det kommer lite nu så att det inte får...
Du måste ju bli något att det är den här filen.
Vad sa de?
Så när man ändrar slatsen så får man här för den här veckan det sitter på en av mina vänner så vi har
Ja.
Ja.
Oj, nej, inte. Sorry. Ja, men det är lugnt. Okej. Yes, so hello. My name is Sarah.
And my name is Kida.
And we are here from Femme, which is a non-political, non-religious women's aid organization here in Gothenburg. And what do? We work for a society that is free from men's violence against women. And the women that we have targeted, especially, is women with from a foreign descent. And we will come back to why our work is so important in relation to the fact that they are from a foreign descent. And we'll get to that in a second. But what we do, mainly, and what we're so proud of, is that we have a telephone line that you can call into, and you can there speak to someone from us who speaks their or your mother tongue. So as an abused woman, you don't need to be afraid that you won't understand what your rights in the society are, or what we are saying, or anything like that, because whatever language you speak, at least 45 different. We have 45 languages, and we will be able to offer that help for you. And hereby we also remove a barrier that could prohibit someone to actually reach out and ask for help. So, and no, nothing else here. Let's see. Det blir vissa, ja.
Vi kan nog ha det i det här läget. Ja, det blir bra.
Det går jättefint. Jag kan bara scrolla ut lite. So, who are our target group? As I said before, women of a foreign descent. But most importantly, something that makes women more vulnerable is when their residency is based on their relationship to the abuser, the man. So women or girls that have temporary residency permits, and let's see here. Sometimes or often their abuse doesn't meet the threshold of migrant protection. So therefore their residency here is, as I said just now, connected to the mercy of the abuser. And also the abuser, obviously it's beneficial for them to maybe not inform the woman of the rights that she has. And therefore they will be forced to stay in this relationship with this man, and they might be more isolated in that sense, because they might be afraid to then contact authorities due to fear of deportation. Maybe that they have heard that if they contact the state, they will lose custody of their kids. As we maybe remember from last year, especially, there was a disinformation campaign where there was a rumor that you would lose custody of your kids if you would contact the Swedish social services, and that they would systematically remove Muslim children without any legal grounds. And these things are, when we come into the picture, is when we can tell them in their mother tongue that this is not the truth, and we can give them this legal aid in order for them to actually be able to break free. So yeah, that's what I have to say on this topic.
Vi kan se om vi kan...
Do you hear me anyways? Can we maybe do it without the, or should I? Oh, for the Zoom, yeah, sure. Maybe, you know what? Yeah, I'll just hold it. This is perfect. Does everyone hear me?
Yeah. Yes.
Very good. As I was preparing for this, I realized I hadn't spoken in English for about 3 years, so we'll see how this goes. But before we start talking about this specific topic, I just want to say that the work we do at Femme, besides what Sarah spoke about, is that we offer legal aid and emotional support. So we do all the things a normal women's aid clinic does, but we do it in different languages and with the formal cultural understanding and also a legal knowledge. We do not, however, run shelters. That is an important detail. So we don't have women staying with us. So it's more of an aid clinic. And as Sarah said, it's always difficult to be exposed to violence, whether it's physical or psychological or financial or sexual, whatever that type of violence may be. But I think we're here today because we know that women who also have migrational issues struggle much more. They are much more exposed. So that is kind of the purpose of our organization, so to speak. And what has been mentioned today that I thought I would deep dive into, there are of course many migrational laws that affect women, but we're going to talk about the 4-year rule. Previously, when you spoke about this, you talked about the 2-year rule, but it's gotten worse. And it is, as Regina previously spoke about, kind of marriage residencies. So someone with a Swedish citizenship or permanent residency here will find a woman from another country, and their entire residence in Sweden and their legal right to stay in Sweden is based on that relationship. And when you get this residency, you get a temporary residency for 2 years. And previously, if you stayed in that relationship for 2 years, you could then get a permanent residency. What has changed a couple of years ago is that now you need another temporary 2 years, and then you can get the permanent one. So it's just gotten significantly worse, which is horrible. So when women end up in these relationships, they, as Sarah and Regina spoke about, normally don't know society. They don't know the rules, they don't know the laws, they don't know the language. They're very isolated. Their only contact very often, what we have seen, is the man's friend, and the man's family. Of course, there are other non-hetero relationships, but in the purpose of this discussion, I will speak from a standpoint. And all the information that they receive about society comes from their partner, their abuser, and that information is often incredibly correct. We have heard women who believe that they don't have the right to file a police report against a Swedish citizen because they're not themselves a Swedish citizen, which is of course not true, but they don't know that. We've heard women who have walked down the street with their partner, where the partner pointed out a police officer and said, "You better behave or I will go up to them and they will report you immediately," which is also not true. But there's been so much abuse, and what we have seen is men that put this into some kind of systemic behavior. They will find a woman, fall in love, or the woman falls in love, bring her to Sweden, and then expose her to abuse. Not only sexual and physical and mental abuse, but also financial abuse, and also use her as free labor and free maid and childcare. And then towards the end of these 2 years, they will themselves end the relationship and send the woman back, and in a couple of years, bring a new person over. And if this relationship is not maintained, then the woman's right to stay in Sweden no longer exists, and they will be deported. Now, a couple of years ago, we did make some new legislation that says that if the relationship ends because of violence, the woman can still get her residency extended, which is great. There's nothing wrong with this legislation. Well, we could discuss that, but the legislation itself is not the problem. The problem is how it's been implemented through the migration offices. So what we have seen through, short for that, kind of previous rulings, is that Well, first of all, the violence needs to be of a certain extent. So all type of mental or emotional or financial violence, let's just forget about it. It needs to be physical violence that is quite serious. And also the woman or the one that is suffering needs to be, how do I say this, the perfect victim. She needs to have acted absolutely perfectly. Because she cannot have stayed in the relationship for too short of a time. So if the violence has started too soon, then the relationship was not serious, so she can't stay. If she stayed in the relationship for too long during the violence, well, then she didn't leave because of the violence, because then she would have left the first time the violence occurred. So the relationship did not then end because of the violence, so she also can't stay. So it is almost, it's not impossible, very difficult to be able to stay based on this. And all of us who work with this knows that that's not how it works. The woman does not control when the violence starts. The woman does not normally leave the first time. And just because you don't leave the first time someone hits you does not mean that you didn't leave because they hit you. So it's very frustrating rulings to read when they talk about this violence, a very serious violence that has been proven, and they're not questioning the violence. But because she stayed for 3 months while there was violence, when she finally left, well, she clearly didn't leave because of the violence, but then she would have left 3 months ago. But if she had left 3 months ago, she would have left too early and the relationship wouldn't have been serious enough. So it's a mess.
Moment 22.
Yeah.
Or however you say.
Exactly. And another thing we need to bear with us that a lot of these women aren't asylum seekers to start with. But maybe once they have left their family and left their countries, there is now some form of threat against them from their home countries. This is not to say that there is some form of, all women are miserable in their home countries and someone came and saved them and brought them to Sweden. A lot of them are very fine with saying that, no, I will leave and I will go back home. But for a lot of them, there has now been a very threatful situation in their home country because they left, because they married someone outside of their culture, outside of their religion, because they were in love. And now they can't go back and they're very much stuck. So a lot of the conversations we have with these women is, do I stay in this relationship and endure the violence? Or now no longer 2 years, but 4 years. And then, 1 more year for the migration officers to handle the kind of paperwork for getting a permanent residency. Or do I leave and get deported and go through a threatful situation? So it's very difficult. And we've talked about this for a long time. This has been a topic in Sweden for a long time in these circles. And we have not made any development towards better, rather the worse, because now it's 4 years instead of 2. And the way that the political climate in Sweden is going, I don't foresee that changing, unfortunately. Are there any, I don't know if are we doing questions, no questions? Afterwards, okay, pretty much afterwards. So this is one of the topics we wanted to talk to you about, and this is another one. As of 1st of April this year, there was new legislation that abolished what is called track change for asylum seekers. And I will explain what that is. Normally, when you apply for residency, except if you're an asylum seeker, you have to do it from outside of the country. And you have to get your residency approved before you come into Sweden. So that is if it's a marriage residency, or if it's based on job or studies or whatever the case may be, you have to apply from outside of the country. And then you can come in when you have your residence. You're not allowed to apply from inside. Previously, if you were an asylum seeker and your request was denied, you could do a track change, as it's called. You could apply for a work permit from inside the country if you did it within a set amount of time. Even then it was difficult because you had to have a job for a set amount of time and you only had a couple of months to then apply, and you need to have a job a while before, and it's difficult to get a job as an asylum seeker, but it was possible. As of 1st of April this year, so about a month and a half ago, that was now revoked. So asylum seekers have been here to apply for asylum and gotten a job and work here. If their asylum request is denied, they can still apply for a work permit, but they can't do it from here. They have to go back to the country they wanted asylum from and apply from there. Theoretically, they can apply from another country as well, as long as not within Sweden, but you can see how this creates problems. Even if you bypass all the risk and the danger of having to go back to your country where you wanted asylum from or seek asylum from, the very practical aspect of, well, what employer is going to hold the job for you while you wait for 6 months for a permit from another country. So you have in effect made it impossible for asylum seekers. I'm just gonna check the time so I don't. Or not, 30 minutes, yeah, 15 minutes. Perfect. Perfect. Go back. And then also a new change is that new asylum applications are not allowed if deportations order are still in play. So normally when you apply for asylum, you get a no, and then after a while you can get a deportation order that says you have to leave the country and you can't come back for 5 years. Previously, you could apply for asylum again, or you could apply within a couple of years if the situation in your home country had changed. Now, even if the situation in your home country has changed, even if it's gotten significantly worse, you cannot apply during this period of 5 years, essentially. So I think these were the main legal aspects we wanted to speak about. And what we see in the women that come into contact with us that are subject to this, especially the 4-year rule. 2-year rule is a bit of a catch-your name because it was a bit more great, but the 4-year rule, as it is now, is that they are incredibly vulnerable. They are vulnerable in the sense that they don't know their rights. They are vulnerable in the sense that they're abusers. They're only bridge to society, and they also don't have a lot of options to kind of seek help. Because in a lot of contact with authorities, which is not allowed, it's not supposed to be this way, but their husband or their husband's sister or mother or friend will act as their translator. So there's in effect no real possibility for them to ask for help or apply for help. I saw one case from migration officers about a woman who had been the subject of violence and left and wanted to renew her permit. And she got a no, but the situation was that she had come here from, I don't remember the country now, so I'm not gonna guess. It was somewhere in the MENA region, and he was Swedish. And she had been subject of horrible violence. And one of the things they said when they denied her permit was that she had had very many contact with authorities, with migration officers for interviews, with doctors, with healthcare professionals, and she had never spoken about the violence previously. It is now that she's bringing it up, so what? She's not believable. And what she said when you look at the case, which is so absurd, is that in all of these contacts, her husband has been the one in the room with her translating what she was saying to the people and authorities. So even if she had spoken up, which you obviously don't do when your abuser is sitting right next to you, he would have obviously not translated that. And this is not supposed to happen. People are supposed to hire interpreters and outside forces, but cost and time, and so the people in the authorities who have met this woman didn't mean any harm, obviously, but they were crunched on time, and someone says, well, no, I can translate, I can help, and I can do this, and it's sure fine instead of having to rebook it. And that's what you do. And that is a problem. So if anyone works within healthcare or within the authorities and meets people, especially women, migrant women, when we go and do lectures, which you do a lot of for the active, we always understate the importance of making sure to meet the woman alone or with an interpreter or someone that is not part of the family. So they do have a real option to speak up.
What happened in this case?
She was deported.
So, and nothing was, oh, right.
So she was deported. I haven't looked her up specifically, so I don't know if she managed to come back in some other way. But in that case, she was not allowed to stay. I think that those were the things I wanted to go through about the legalities of these. Do you want your mic back?
I can take it back.
Yeah.
Try to put it closer because.
Oh, did you? Oh, was it? Oh, sorry.
Because in the Zoom center later on,
Yeah.
we have the.
Yes, we just have some last words here about what we're talking about today. And basically it's that we can establish that migrant women, they remain systematically marginalized. We have understood that, especially through your what you talked about here. And also the protection system, they fail to recognize the connection between violence and migration, which is also it makes it harder. And the legal framework overlooks cultural and linguistic barriers when it comes to support. which we've also talked about.
Yeah. So we've left a few minutes for any potential questions, if anyone has them. Otherwise, we are. Yes, we have one over there. Yeah.
It's just, I want to know how you reach people at the grassroots, because I'm just hearing about Lex Femme now.
Mhm.
And I know that where I live in the most populated migrant area, we have a lot of people
Mhm.
who are suffering by gender-based violence and this having migration issue. I have to say, I was abused for 10 good years from the father of my kids. And it was like, when you were talking, I felt like you were talking about me. Because it was like, you don't need to say, if you say, I'm going to call the social, they're going to take your children, you're going to be deported, until I got my inner power and strength. Then I started going for therapy. And I know, like, people from Africa will have quite a lot of women who are still in my shoes. That even when I tell them, like, go and talk to this person, go to family behind that, you can walk to the social, like, there's this picture painted about social services that the moment you go there, they're going to take your children. We need to reach out to these women and let them know that they are not going to take your children. I was in the same thing for 10 good years. If you say anything, like, he has to sign my bank ID to do some things himself, like financially abused, mentally I was abused, you know. So it feels like, you know, when you don't have love, or you don't have, you don't give out what you don't have. So it affected my own children because I couldn't give them the love I didn't have. So my question is, how do you get to people at the grassroots? Because it's not all about speaking, but how do we reach those migrant women?
Yeah. Thank you so much for your question and for sharing. The question was, we'll just say it in the mic. How do we reach women at grassroots levels that need this information? And it's a very good question. It's a very difficult question. It's something we constantly work with, and we are very open to ideas and suggestions if anyone has them. So one of the things we do is we make sure that all our information that we spread through flyers and brochures and ads on, you know, trams and such, is in multiple different languages. We also can't do all 45 languages, but we do 10 of the most common ones that we get in. So we make sure that information is accessible in your own language. We have ads on trams, and we try to have lectures at different SFEs and different migrational houses and that sort of information. But it is very hard to reach out. It is very hard to kind of get to the grassroots level where people need this information, because it's very good that everyone is in here and getting this information right now. But there's also a lot of other people who need this information, maybe more than what we in this room do right now. And it's very difficult to reach out, and we try to constantly work with where we think a lot of migrant women are, and have that in our thought when we market ourselves. Sounds like the wrong word, because we're not trying to, you know, make money, but so I would love to speak to you after this about, you know, what areas you're talking about, and if you have any ideas about how to reach out. So, but it is a constant struggle to make sure that our information comes to the people that need help. And something we can also mention that we didn't mention before is that when you contact us, you can first of all be anonymous, and we do not have any responsibility or legal requirement to contact the social services. A lot of other actors do. They have to contact social services if they think their children are in harm. We don't have to do that, and it's meant that a lot of women who are scared of social services taking their children want to contact us, because they know they can be anonymous, and they know that we do not contact anyone with this information. And what we have found, because sometimes we get questions about this, that what if a child is struggling and you're not, you know, reaching out to help that child, is that by saying that we are not going to contact anyone, we have more women contacting us, and we can tell them about the system and how it works, and then get the women themselves to ask for help. Because very often it's not about the women not, you know, caring about the children or loving them. It's that they're scared that someone will take their children away. I don't know if that was the answer to your question, but very good question. Thank you so much. Yes, you have another question?
Yeah, thank you so much, and what an important work, of course, Ulrika Grande from UN Women Sweden. And we have also worked a little bit with Femme. I don't know, and so I was wondering how you work together, maybe with others doing the same, and also other women's shelters, etc. how you connect and strengthen each other and how you get your funding, because that's the difficult part.
That's a cool part, yeah. Definitely. The question was that how do we interact or work together with other organizations and how we get our funding, if I
Yeah.
summarize the question correctly. We have a lot of different cooperations with different actors that we try to have. One with, I've got them changed the name recently, but they're an online service that focuses on the younger clientele, because most of the women that come into us are a bit older, so we try to kind of work together on that. And we're also part of an IOP that has recently started, where most of the large women's aid organizations in Gothenburg and the kind of region work together with the social services to kind of share information and work together. We don't have, as it stands right now, an actual collaboration or a project with Femme, but we do have with others in that do the same thing in different cities. So in Malmö and in Stockholm. So if someone calls in and needs legal aid from Stockholm in, let's say, Arabic, we know an organization there that can help them. And what I can say about the women's aid organizations in Gothenburg is that we are very good at helping each other, in the sense that everyone can't do everything, but we all have different niches. So if someone comes into us who doesn't have migrational issues, speaks Swedish very well, but has problem with maybe addiction. Well, there's another women's aid organization that is specialized on women in violent in partner relationship. Intimate partner violence relationships, who work with women with addiction. So we kind of try to help each other back up forward. And we also work with a lot of shelters if they have a woman who doesn't speak Swedish and they need something translated a bit quicker, maybe just instructions about how to work the laundry machine or something like that. They can call us and we'll relay that information. And as for funding, me and Sarah are part of the board. We have 3 full-time employees, and we get our funding mainly from Gothenburg City and social citizen. And now, as the new EOP project has started, we'll probably get most of our funding from there. But it is always a struggle.
Yeah.
And the struggle also that you can't really plan in advance. You get your money 1 year or 2 years at a time, so you can't really have any long-term plans. You have to make do with what you have. Thank you. You have a question down in the back?
Yes, I was just wondering about this, when the case you took up, when she got deported, and it's, for me, it's quite clear that even though it wasn't contact, there was no way of her being considered. Like, what's the response from that? Is there anything, or is it just that, no, is there, like, what do the authorities say when they make this decision?
Yeah.
And also this man that do this systemically, is there anything for them? Is there, like, can you think of, okay, but this man has done this 4 times now, maybe we should check into what's happening here? Is there anything in that sort of way?
The question was the case I spoke about before, when she contacted the authorities and they didn't, or her husband was translating, what the follow-up was on that or what the response was on that. It is very difficult to say, because when you get these ruling, it is the final ruling. So they go through, oh, what has she said? What has he said? What is the information? This is our ruling. And in that case, they just said that this is not the. They didn't say that she was lying, but they did say that this is not the routine. You always get a translator when you go into meeting with authorities. So she did have it. So they kind of just ignore that, and also kind of landed in it wouldn't have affected the ruling anyways. That was the answer to that. And the men that was that the other question? What? Yeah. I will be honest and say I don't really know. I mean, we still have a criminal system parallel to this. So if you're charged and in a criminal court, then that is obviously a consequence in its own way. I would imagine a migration officer that sees someone trying to bring someone here for the 4th time might react and have more follow-up questions. But just because you've done this previously or brought someone here previously and the relationship didn't work out doesn't mean that you can't apply again. So the requirements are the same, but they look at if the relationship is serious, if it's meant to last, and it might be more difficult to reach those requirements. But it's not one of those, oh, you've done this 3 times, so we're not getting it a 4th time. There is no kind of bar in that way. If that makes sense.
But I just wonder, how should the woman then know that it's supposed to be a translator here at the doctor? If she gets her the information from the man,
Yeah.
you will not tell her?
No.
I just think it's, it kind of feels that it's not really for that the women are being protected, but I don't know.
No, you're completely right. It's pardon the language, but a dumb system. If we're being crass, that's what it is. There's people making rulings about subjects they don't know anything about. And that is the problem. So I'm fully agreeing with you, but that is unfortunately what it is.
Yeah.
I think,
Thank you so much. Yeah.
thank you so much. Thank you for the question.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.